you should act as if the intent of what you're doing is printed on your forehead. All that stuff that you think they don't know, I promise you, they know. I can tell you so many times where I was like when I was in Tradet and I'm out there and I see some freaking new guy and he's just getting after it. Like, I'm getting inspired by a guy that's just holding a corner with his Mark 48, just laying it down and just like trying to give direction. You're like, dude, this is freaking awesome. So it doesn't matter if you're a frontline guy. It doesn't matter. You are still impacting the culture of the organization. And if you think about that, you know, that's one of those things that if you think about the impact that you're having to your organization, by the way, this includes your family. By the way, this includes your friends. You know that friend that's like stepping up and is doing something, and you're like, man, I got to do this too now. Like, that's what it is. That's you have culture amongst your friends, and when that culture is like, let's get better, let's do better, let's hold a high standard. That is how we develop cultures in our families, with our friends, and in our organizations.
I was going to say that you know, obviously when I was teaching that course, we had 4 weeks of classroom, a week long field training exercise, and I tried to cram as much of that stuff as I could in. Obviously, you were the first person coming to talk to those, the Jocko brief. But I think one of the things I was most proud of is, you know, I think for a lot of guys like me that came out of the Naval Academy or ROTC or OCS that weren't a Mustang officer, somebody who was, you know, commissioned, prior enlisted, I didn't really have that visibility. You know, you don't understand. It's harder to realize that you got those eyes on you, you know, from the folks on your team that are looking at you, and that you have to live and set that standard. And Bobby Holm was one of the guys I brought in every time to come in and talk to the class, you know, along with a couple other awesome SEAL enlisted leaders. And I just they got to sit in there and hear, okay, what did you respect in the officers that you admire and like working for? What did you not respect? You know, what did you what are some things that people did that lost respect, you know, and that, or that you had disdain for? And so they got to see that perspective, and I think it's hard to see that. It's hard to detach and see how the world views you. Some people do that better than others. It's certainly not innate, I think, in most of us. And I think that was something that you certainly instilled in me, and I try to instill in others as well, when they can see that perspective of, hey, let me tell you what I saw in some people that I had no respect for, would never want to work for again. You know,
one of the biggest shortfalls that you can have as a human being and as a leader is not understanding that other people can see what's happening. Like, when you think that you're pulling the wool over somebody's eyes, you look so dumb, and it's just terrible. It's a lack of self-awareness. And there's actually that when we had Jimmy May on, he was talking about going through BUDS, and they were doing all these psychological surveys, and one of the things they found was if the way a guy viewed himself matched the way he was viewed by his team, he had a better chance of making it through. Even if he viewed himself as like, hey, I'm not sure I belong here, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And the team thought, well, I don't know if he should really be here. He seems like he's working hard, though. That guy has a better chance of making it than someone that has an attitude of like, I definitely deserve to be here, and I'm going to make it. And the team thinks, oh, he's probably not going to make it. And of course, there's anomalies, and it's not 100%. But what that tells me is, you know, when you think of yourself a certain way and other people see you in a really different way, that's going to be a problem. And when when we'd have officers that were having issues, it was always that, right? It was always the officer that thought that no one saw him, you know, skip out of the weapons cleaning. Like, he thinks, oh, they think I just have to go work on a brief. They know that he didn't go work on a brief. They know that he just didn't want to get his freaking hands dirty. Or when it's time to pick up brass, and it's like, well, you know, gents, I've got to head back for a meeting. They know that you can get out of that meeting. They know that 100%. And you think that they don't, and it's just absolutely terrible. So you should, in your mind, kind of like when I talk about leadership capital, like you should walk around like your bank account's almost empty. You should act as if the intent of what you're doing is printed on your forehead, right? That's how you should act. You should act like, if I'm going to skip picking up the brass because it's going to be hot out there. I should act as if I'm skipping this because I don't want to be hot and freaking walking around the desert for the next day and a half. Because when I go into, regardless of what I tell Leif, hey Leif, I got to go back and we've got a meeting. I've got a meeting with the skipper, so you guys go ahead and clean up brass. If I say that, I promise you, what Leif is reading is the card on my forehead that says don't want to work. I don't want to get my hands dirty. So just think about that. You should always think that your intent is printed on your forehead, because it might as well be. It just might as well be. And this is how we're setting the example. So if you think you're setting a good example, but you're really skirting around and you're doing things, nefarious things, or you're cutting corners, or you're being lazy, I promise you, they see it. And here's the thing. Here's a key point. If you're listening to this right now and you think that, well, Jocko's wrong about this, you're the person I'm talking to. I'm literally talking to you right now. If you're the person that's like, well, I'm really good at I can act pretty well. The team doesn't know that that I'm leaving early. The team doesn't know that I'm skipping this. The team doesn't know that I'm nervous about all that stuff that you think they don't know. I promise you, they know. And that's why it's good to have Bobby, when you're teaching the JLs, have Bobby Holland come in there and be like, oh yeah, I had this officer that I work for, and when it's time to clean weapons, he would never be there. He always said he had to go do the AAR. Like, oh really? Okay, we got it. You don't have to do that AAR. You don't have to. You can do it later. It's not due. There's no due date on it. You don't want to do this extra work. And by the way, it's extra work? Yeah, you're the officer in charge. You have extra work. You're making more money. You're responsible for all this shit. So for you to do some extra work, yeah. And I'll tell you what, there's sometimes where the boys will be like, hey, sir, I know you got to do this. They'll kick you out of that shit. That happens. Great. If that happens, you can resist, and then they'll be like, dude, no, give me that. I had that happen many times in my career. Hey, we got this. Get out of here. You did that to me 1,000 times. Hey, Jocko, go. Get out of here. We got this. That happens to me today at Echelon. That happened to you and me at Echelon Front a year ago or whatever. We were trying to help freaking prep for whatever, and Jamie's like,
we're stuffing bags for the council. Jamie's like,
you guys can get out of here. Yeah, because we were more because we were just messing things up, But
you set the example though, Jocko, and that's what you're talking, right? As a leader, you got to set the example for the culture, and whether it was going out and pick up brass. I'd never seen anyone do that before. There wasn't even an expectation that you'd be there to help pick up brass, but you're there just picking up brass. They're like, oh dang, Jocko's here picking up brass. And then what also was crazy is the dives. You might think this is weird, but in the SEAL teams, SEALs absolutely hate diving and getting in the water for whatever reason.
Many SEAls.
Some SEAls, yes, many SEAls. And they would try to do everything they can to avoid it, to be in wet, cold water. And we used to joke with Chris Kyle about that. He'd be like, no, we have some sniper training set up. And then the sniper training fell off. I was like, hey, Chris, you going to join us for the dive? He's like, no, I've got an eardrum issue. I was like, when did you have this eardrum issue? It's the first I'm hearing about it. It's like, when I was in SQT, which is 5 years before that. Yeah. So I was like, you sure you have an eardrum issue? Like, dude, get your stuff ready. We're diving. But you just showed up to the dives, and you weren't leading the dives. And if you're on a combat dive, particularly if you're doing like a pole dive where everyone's just hanging on to like this painter pole underwater, you're in the dark. It's nighttime. You can't see anything. You're literally holding onto a pole and just kicking for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And that's all. Like Jocko would just show up and do it. I'd never even seen that before. And it was something that just it definitely built in the culture of the team. Like, hey man, we're all in this thing together. Like we're going to train together. We're going to push the standards together. And I'm here and I'm going to be a part of this thing. And I think we started kicking you out. We realized like, hey man, we know you got stuff to do, and we got this.
I never thought for a millisecond not doing evolutions. Like that was not a thing to me. I didn't when you told, I don't know when you first told me, like we were kind of like fired up that you were doing the dives. You probably told me that like 3 years ago, and I was like, well, really? Like what would the task unit commander do? Sit around? Like that just doesn't make sense to me. And again, that's because I had guys like Delta Charlie, that first guy to step up and be like, oh, we got something shitty to do, I'm going first, let's go. Cool. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hey, if you want to get into these a little bit deeper, or you want to talk to us directly, you can go to extremeownership.com. You can join our online leadership academy. We talk about this stuff. This stuff is what we live for. And in the meantime, thank you for listening to us debrief. Now go lead.